The doctor slipped me a secret note that read, "Don't go home, run." That night, I heard my son Benjamin tell his wife Eleanor, "It's time to move forward with the nursing home plan before she realizes what's happening." They thought I was helpless, but they were terribly mistaken. My name is Martha Caldwell, and I just turned 70 last spring. For 45 years, I dedicated my life to being a mother, pouring every bit of love I had into Benjamin. He wasn't born from my womb, but Robert and I chose him at the county orphanage when he was just 2, a little lost soul with eyes too big for his face. We didn't have much, Robert driving a truck and me cleaning houses after my shift waiting tables at the local diner. But we gave Ben everything. A roof over his head on Elm Street, warm meals, scraped together tuition for state college so he wouldn't start life owing money. When Robert's heart gave out 10 years ago, suddenly, quietly over breakfast, Ben became my whole world. He, his wife Eleanor, she seemed so sweet back then, always bringing over casseroles, and my granddaughter Olivia, 16 now and sharp as a tack. They moved in with me a couple of years back. "Too much house for you alone, Mom," Ben had said. It felt right, less empty. But that Tuesday, after a routine checkup at Dr. Sterling's clinic down by the old courthouse, everything shattered. Dr. Sterling, bless his heart, he'd been our family doctor for what felt like forever. Patched up Ben's scraped knees, saw Robert through countless flu seasons. He always looked you straight in the eye, told you the plain truth. But not that day. He seemed jumpy, nervous. His hands fumbled a bit with the blood pressure cuff. He kept studying my chart like he'd never seen it before. "Everything looks good, Martha," he finally said, his voice too loud, too cheerful. "Heart's ticking strong. Labs are clear as a bell. You're healthier than folks half your age." It should have been comforting, but it felt wrong, like a poorly rehearsed line. As I was gathering my coat and my old worn purse, the one Robert bought me for our anniversary years ago, he stepped close, pretending to adjust a framed picture on the wall behind me. Quick as lightning, he slipped a folded piece of paper deep into my purse, right under my spare reading glasses. His fingers felt cold, unsteady against mine for just a second. "Take care now, Martha," he whispered, forcing a smile that didn't reach his worried eyes. "And remember, family isn't always what it seems." Family isn't always what it seems? The phrase clanged like an alarm bell in my head all the way home in the dusty cab. Why the secret note? Dr. Sterling wasn't a man for drama. Something was seriously wrong. I clutched my purse, the small paper inside feeling like a lead weight. I couldn't read it yet. Not there. The house was quiet when I got back, but the air felt thick, wrong. Ben, Eleanor, and Olivia were huddled on the living room sofa, heads together, whispering. They snapped apart the second they heard my key. Eleanor quickly slid some papers she was holding under a throw pillow. Too fast, too guilty. "How was the doctor, Mom?" Ben asked, trying to sound casual, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Fine, son. Perfect health," I said, watching him closely. Was that disappointment I saw flicker across his face before he smoothed it away? Eleanor's smile was tight, brittle. "That's wonderful, Grandma," Olivia added, her voice strangely flat. "Means you'll be around for a long time." Dinner was torture. Silence hung heavy between us. Ben poked at his meatloaf. Eleanor answered my questions with single words. Olivia stared at her phone. "Is something wrong?" I finally had to ask, the tension unbearable. "No, Mom, just tired," Ben mumbled, the familiar refrain. It felt like sitting with polite strangers. Later, in the quiet solitude of my bedroom, the silence amplifying my growing dread, I finally pulled out the note. My hands shook as I unfolded the small square. Dr. Sterling's neat script was rushed, urgent. "Mrs. Caldwell, your family was here yesterday. Eleanor asked about your mental state, if I could certify you need special care. They want to put you in a nursing home. Also asked about your inheritance, assets. Don't go home. Run. Dr. Sterling." The room seemed to tilt. Nursing home, inheritance, assets. My Ben? Plotting? To put me away? To take the little Robert and I had worked so hard for? The whispers, the hidden papers, their strange reaction to my good health. It all coalesced into a monstrous, sickening picture. They weren't just disappointed, they were furious. Dr. Sterling hadn't given them the medical justification they needed. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the old house sounded like a footstep. I lay rigid, staring into the darkness, the note clutched in my fist. How could they? The boy I loved, the woman I welcomed as a daughter, the grandchild I adored. Around 2 a.m. I heard it. muffled voices from the kitchen. My blood ran cold. Holding my breath, I slipped out of bed, crept to my door, and pressed my ear against the wood. It was them. Benjamin, Eleanor, Olivia, their whispers sharp in the dead of night. Damn doctor wouldn't cooperate. Eleanor hissed, her voice dripping venom. Told him she's losing it, forgets things, leaves the stove on. He wouldn't bite. Relax, Ben murmured, frustration tightening his voice. We find another doctor, someone more flexible. And what about now? Olivia whined, sounding years older than 16. My college fund needs that money. We can't wait for her to drop dead. Olivia, Ben snapped, but Eleanor cut him off. She's right, Ben. We need to move. This house is worth a bundle. Plus her pension, we could finally live decently. I didn't sign up to change diapers for some senile old woman spending our money. My house, my pension, theirs. Lawyer tomorrow, Ben decided. See if we can get guardianship without Sterling. Find a loophole. And if not, Eleanor pushed. Plan B, Ben whispered, the words barely reaching me, chilling me to the bone. We make her actually lose her mind. Plan B? Olivia asked, her voice a mix of morbid curiosity and a fear I recognized too well. We make her actually lose her mind, Benjamin whispered, and the casual cruelty in his tone made my stomach heave. Switch her blood pressure pills, maybe? Hide her reading glasses, her keys, move things around in the kitchen. Tell her she imagined conversations we never had. A few weeks of constant confusion, maybe a month tops. Any doctor will sign the papers then. Dr. Sterling won't be our only game in town. The sheer calculated evil of it left me breathless. They weren't just going to passively wait for me to decline. They were going to actively sabotage my mind, manufacture my senility to justify stealing everything I had. Perfect, Eleanor breathed, a sickening satisfaction in her voice. Once she's tucked away in some state-run facility, Sunset Meadows sounds appropriately dreary, we'll have power of attorney. Sell this dump, collect her pension checks, Olivia gets her college tuition, we pay off, well, your debts, Ben, and maybe finally get away from this dreary neighborhood. Debts? So Benjamin was in financial trouble. I filed that away. Dad, you're brilliant. Olivia chimed in again, her earlier hesitation replaced by a chilling admiration. But what if someone catches on? Like that nosy neighbor Carol. She's always watching. Nobody will. Benjamin scoffed with utter confidence. She's got no one else. Who's going to believe a confused old lady over her loving, concerned family? We'll be heroes for taking care of her. He chuckled, that low, grating sound again. Poor thing. They were right about my isolation. Robert was gone. My few remaining relatives lived states away. Carol was kind, but just a neighbor across the street. Dr. Sterling had risked his career to warn me, but he couldn't physically pull me out of this house. I was alone, vulnerable, exactly as they perceived me, but they were fatally wrong about one crucial detail. Robert hadn't just left me memories and a house that needed repairs. He'd been a careful man, always worried about leaving me secure after watching his own mother struggle as a widow. Years ago, after a small, unexpected inheritance from a distant uncle, he'd quietly, meticulously set up a separate investment account in my name only. For your security, Martha, he'd insisted, his hand covering mine. Just yours. Don't mention it to anyone, not even Ben. Let him learn to stand on his own. It wasn't a king's ransom. No offshore millions or foreign properties like in some wild story. It was just shy of $80,000, carefully invested by Mr. Harrison, a trusted local broker Robert knew from the VFW post. Enough. Enough to fight back. Enough to disappear. Enough to make them regret underestimating me. I hadn't touched a penny, respecting Robert's wishes, wanting Ben to be self-sufficient. Now, that hidden nest egg, that secret Robert had guarded for my future, was my only lifeline. Okay, Benjamin concluded their late-night meeting. Plan A, lawyer tomorrow, push for guardianship based on concern. Plan B, Operation Confused Grandma starts subtly if the lawyer needs more proof. Eleanor, first thing, get copies of those cards. Small withdrawals, groceries, gas, nothing big enough to flag right away. Already planned, Eleanor confirmed smugly. And Ben, you need to find that will. It needs updating and to reflect her current wishes. Don't worry, Ben replied. Grandma, in her deteriorating state, will soon decide to leave everything to her devoted caretakers. Genius, Olivia whispered again. Their casual cruelty, plotting my demise in the very kitchen where I'd baked their birthday cakes, finally finally solidified something within me. The fear receded, replaced by a cold, hard anger I hadn't known I possessed. I heard their footsteps fade down the hall. I waited, motionless, until the deep silence of the house settled again. Then I moved. Dr. Sterling's note burned in my mind. Run. Yes, but not in panic. I would execute a strategic withdrawal. I would disappear. Yes, but on my terms, leaving them to face a reality they couldn't possibly anticipate. Sleep was a forgotten luxury. My mind raced, laying out the steps like a chess master plotting a checkmate, before the first hint of dawn painted the sky gray, while the house remained shrouded in silence. I moved with the stealth I didn't know I had. My smallest, oldest suitcase dragged silently from the back of the hall closet. Only the absolute essentials: my passport, Robert's death certificate, Ben's adoption papers, a painful irony but necessary documentation, a few changes of my plainest clothes, nothing they'd recognize easily, my vital medications, and the most crucial item, Robert's worn leather address book, containing not just old friends' numbers, but the contact information for Mr. Harrison, the broker managing the secret account. One last perilous move: my cheap smartphone, voice recorder app activated, a staged trip to the kitchen, pretending to get a glass of water, lingering just outside their slightly ajar bedroom door. Yes, they were awake, murmuring final instructions. Eleanor detailing how she'd distract me while copying my cards later that morning. Ben confirming his 10 a.m. appointment with Mr. Abernathy, the lawyer known for aggressive elder law cases. Think she suspects? Eleanor murmured, a faint tremor of doubt. Clueless, Ben scoffed. Too old, too trusting. Where'd she even go? Got nobody, nothing. We're it. Pathetic, Eleanor agreed. Their utter confidence was my escape route. I captured their damning words, saved the file, slipped back to my room, grabbed the suitcase. The note left on the kitchen table was deliberately bland. Feeling a bit under the weather, decided to try Dr. Sterling's early walk-in clinic. Might be a while. Martha. Plausible. Vague. It would buy me precious hours. Out the back door, into the cool, damp pre-dawn air. Didn't look back. A cab, pre-booked using a cheap burner phone I'd bought weeks ago for emergencies and paid for with hidden grocery money, waited a block away. Destination. Not the clinic, but a specific bus stop across town. Then, a second cab hailed from there. Destination. A different bank branch, far from my neighborhood, the one where Robert had initially set up the secret account with Mr. Harrison's help. Accessing and transferring the bulk of the $80,000 electronically to a brand new account at a third, entirely unrelated bank took less than an hour, thanks to Robert's careful planning and the security questions only I knew. I left a minimal amount in the original secret account, just enough to avoid immediate closure flags. Then, a final cab. Destination, the Starlight Motel on the highway outskirts. Clean, anonymous, paid cash for a week up front. Room key clutched in my hand. The flimsy plastic felt like solid gold. I was out, invisible, funded. The game had just begun. I locked the motel room door, drew the cheap curtains, and sat on the edge of the lumpy bed. The adrenaline faded, leaving me trembling. Then I took out Robert's address book and made the call. Mr. Montgomery? My name is Martha Caldwell. Robert Caldwell was my husband. I need your help. Settled into the anonymous quiet of the Starlight Motel room, clean, surprisingly decent, smelling faintly of stale coffee, the reality of my situation washed over me. I was 70 years old, hiding out like a character in a cheap thriller, a fugitive from my own son. The cheap floral print on the bedspread felt scratchy under my trembling hands. For a fleeting, sickening moment, doubt clawed at me. Was I crazy? Was I imagining the malice I'd heard in their whispers? Then I remembered Benjamin's chillingly calm voice. We make her actually lose her mind. No, this wasn't paranoia. This was survival. I took out Robert's old address book, the leather worn smooth over the years, and found the number. Graham Montgomery, attorney at law. Robert had insisted I keep it after some distant cousin tried to contest his uncle's will. Sharp fella, Martha, Robert had grunted. Knows how to handle snakes. Keep his number just in case. Well, just in case had arrived with a vengeance. Using the burner phone I'd bought with cash at a gas station mini-mart, I dialed. Montgomery's secretary sounded crisp, efficient, clearly skeptical when I refused to give my name up front. But when I mentioned Robert Caldwell and hinted at elder abuse involving substantial hidden assets, Graham Montgomery himself came on the line almost immediately. Mr. Montgomery, I began, keeping my voice low, steady, picturing his sharp eyes from the photo Robert had shown me years ago. My name is Martha Caldwell. Robert Caldwell was my husband. I believe my family is conspiring to have me declared incompetent to steal my assets. I have evidence, including recordings. I need your help. Urgently. There was a pregnant pause. Robert Caldwell's widow? He asked, his voice instantly sharpening. Yes, I fear for my safety and my liberty. I left my home this morning. Meet me at my office in 1 hour, he instructed without hesitation, giving me an address downtown, adding specific directions for a discreet back entrance. Tell no one where you are going. Montgomery and Associates occupied a solid old brick building downtown, projecting quiet competence rather than flashy wealth. Graham Montgomery in person was exactly as Robert described, mid-50s, sharp eyes behind classic spectacles, radiating an aura of controlled intensity and no-nonsense capability. I sat across his large mahogany desk and laid everything out. Dr. Sterling's note, the horrifying kitchen conversation I'd overheard, the secret account Robert had established, Benjamin's veiled threats about doctors, my strategic escape. I played the recording I'd captured just that morning, Benjamin and Eleanor confirming their plans. He listened intently, his face unreadable, making occasional notes on a legal pad. When the recording finished, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. Mrs. Caldwell, he said, his voice calm but grave. This is not merely potential abuse. Based on this recording alone, this is a calculated criminal conspiracy. The intent is clear. Your family is playing an extraordinarily dangerous and illegal game. He immediately outlined a multi-pronged strategy. Secure my newly transferred funds beyond any possible reach. Hire the best private investigator available to gather irrefutable, court-admissible evidence of their actions before they could successfully file for guardianship or fabricate medical proof. They perceive you as isolated and vulnerable, Montgomery stated, his eyes meeting mine directly. That perception is now their greatest weakness. We will exploit it. He picked up his phone. Frank Miller, ex-FBI, best PI in the state for this kind of work. Utterly discreet, bulldog tenacious. He'll start surveillance immediately, focusing on their communications, financial activities, and any further attempts to solicit fraudulent medical opinions or legal actions. Over the next few days, the sterile motel room became my unlikely command center. Frank Miller, the PI, proved to be as efficient as Montgomery promised. Encrypted updates began arriving on a secure app Montgomery's team had installed on my burner phone. The first reports confirmed my worst fears and their rapid escalation. Benjamin had indeed met with Arthur Abernathy, a lawyer notorious for aggressive, often ethically dubious guardianship petitions. Eleanor had visited my local bank branch, using copied house keys to access my safety deposit box, which thankfully only contained old sentimental items, no financial documents, and attempting to gain information about the joint account balance, citing deep concern about my sudden confusion and disappearance. The bank manager, bless his professional skepticism, had politely but firmly refused her access without legal authority. Olivia, meanwhile, had been calling distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, spinning elaborate tales about my alarming memory lapses, and hinting broadly about the financial burden of my anticipated long-term care. They were wasting no time, aggressively building their false narrative from multiple angles. Frank also installed discreet, legally permissible surveillance near my house on Elm Street, cameras monitoring the exterior, not inside. His reports painted a vivid picture of escalating panic within the house. Benjamin pacing the front yard like a caged tiger, shouting furiously into his phone. Eleanor rarely leaving, spotted through the windows looking increasingly stressed, chain-smoking on the back porch. Olivia was seen having a tearful, heated argument with her parents on the front steps before storming off. They couldn't find me. My sudden, complete disappearance had thrown a wrench into their carefully laid plans. Their assumed control had vanished, and the lack of access to even the joint account I'd left minimally funded was clearly causing friction. Then came the first concrete evidence from Frank that moved beyond plotting into actionable fraud. Mrs. Caldwell, his encrypted message read late one afternoon, accompanied by a grainy but clear security camera still image. Subject Eleanor attempted to use a credit card issued fraudulently in your name at Le Chic Boutique, downtown approx 14:30 today. Card was declined due to account freeze initiated by Dr. Montgomery. Transaction attempt flagged by bank. Attached is store security footage capturing Ms. Caldwell signing your name, poorly, on the declined slip. Eleanor, already resorting to identity theft, trying to fund her shopping habits. The declined transaction must have sent a shockwave of terror through her. Another update followed just hours later. Subject Benjamin visited 3 separate pawn shops in the South End this afternoon, attempted to sell several pieces of antique silver matching items previously observed in your dining room display cabinet. All shops declined purchase due to lack of proof of ownership and suspicious urgency. Photos attached. They weren't just planning, they were actively trying to liquidate my belongings, getting desperate. Montgomery reacted instantly, using Frank's real-time reports and my sworn affidavit detailing the stolen items and fraudulent card attempts. He secured emergency court orders. These orders officially froze my known assets, the house, the joint bank account, to prevent any unauthorized sales or transfers. He also formally alerted all major credit card companies and reporting agencies to the confirmed identity theft attempts initiated by Eleanor. We were rapidly building a legal fortress around me, brick by documented brick. My burner phone buzzed late that night. A text message from Benjamin. The tone had shifted dramatically. No more pleading, just cold, hard menace. Mom, your little vanishing act is over. We know you're hiding, playing games. If you don't surface at home by tomorrow evening with a very good doctor-verified explanation for this stunt, we will file for emergency guardianship. We have Dr. Sterling's initial notes expressing concern. We found them in your desk drawer, very careless of you, and plenty of neighbors willing to testify about your recent odd behavior. Don't test us. The threat was explicit. They were twisting Dr. Sterling's genuine concern, likely documented before the secret note, and mobilizing neighbors fed lies. Time was running out. They were making their move. Graham, I spoke urgently into the secure phone Montgomery had provided. They're filing for guardianship tomorrow. They claim to have witnesses and are twisting Dr. Sterling's notes. We need to counter decisively now. Precisely the move we anticipated, Martha, Montgomery replied, his voice calm, radiating confidence. And Frank just delivered the ace up our sleeve. Audio recordings, obtained legally via a warrant based on the confirmed financial fraud. Recordings from inside their current residence. It confirms everything. The plot to induce confusion, the motive tied to Benjamin's gambling debts and loan sharks, the plan to forge the will, even Eleanor's affair. Everything. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Are you ready, Martha? Ready to unleash the storm? I looked around the sterile motel room. It wasn't home, but it was my war room, and I was no longer a victim. I was a commander. Yes, I said, my voice clear, unwavering. I am ready. Graham Montgomery moved with the speed and precision of a seasoned general launching a counteroffensive. Before Benjamin could even get his emergency guardianship petition formally filed the next morning, Montgomery's team was already at the courthouse. They filed a comprehensive response, preemptively submitting not just my sworn affidavit detailing the abuse and conspiracy, but also crucial excerpts from Frank Miller's surveillance reports, the damning audio recordings captured inside my house, and initial evidence of Eleanor's credit card fraud. Crucially, they also filed for immediate temporary restraining orders against Benjamin, Eleanor, and Olivia, barring them from contacting me, attempting to access any of my assets, or coming near my now vacant home or my temporary residence, the motel identified only to the court under seal. The judge granted the restraining orders immediately based on the recordings, Montgomery informed me via secure call later that morning. I was eating a bland continental breakfast in the motel lobby, trying to appear like any other traveler. He also scheduled an emergency hearing for their guardianship petition for next week, but our preemptive filing changes the entire dynamic. They are now on the defensive. The news was a small victory, but the battle was far from over. Frank Miller's updates continued to paint a picture of chaos erupting on Elm Street. Subject Benjamin returned home mid-morning, presumably after his lawyer informed him of our filing, Frank reported. Raised voices heard from inside the residence for approximately 45 minutes. Subjects Eleanor and Olivia then left the house separately, appearing highly distressed. Benjamin remained inside, observed making numerous agitated phone calls. Later that day, Frank sent another update. 2 unidentified males visited the Elm Street residence approx. 15 qui. Interaction with subject Benjamin was brief but hostile. Neighbors reported hearing shouting related to money owed. Benjamin appeared visibly intimidated afterwards. The loan sharks. The pressure was mounting on him from all sides. Eleanor's panic manifested differently. Frank tracked her electronically, using data from the fraudulent credit card attempts to her parents' modest home across town. Conversation overheard via legally placed long-range microphone, Frank's report noted coolly. Subject Eleanor blaming subject Benjamin entirely, claiming she was manipulated and unaware of the extent of his debts or the plot against you. Her parents advised her to seek immediate legal counsel separate from Benjamin. The rats were already deserting the sinking ship, trying to save themselves. Olivia's situation was the most complex. She didn't return to Elm Street after the morning argument. Frank located her at a local women's shelter downtown, where she had apparently sought refuge and counseling. She contacted Montgomery's office late that afternoon. She wants to cooperate fully, Montgomery told me. She's terrified of her parents and wants protection. She's willing to provide a formal, detailed statement and testify against them in exchange for consideration regarding her own involvement. Specifically, the money she solicited using false pretenses about your health. It was a difficult ethical dilemma. Olivia had participated, however peripherally, in their lies. But she was also young, pregnant, and clearly scared, and her testimony could be crucial. Offer her protection, Graham, I instructed, my voice heavy. Help her find safe housing away from the shelter. Ensure she has legal representation. But make it clear, cooperation means telling the complete truth about her role as well, Montgomery agreed. Olivia was moved to a secure, confidential location arranged by Frank's team, provided with an independent lawyer, and began the process of formally documenting everything she knew, the timeline of the plot, specific conversations, Eleanor's active role in planning, Benjamin's gambling debts, their intention to forge the will. The following days leading up to the emergency hearing were a blur of legal preparations. Montgomery's team meticulously compiled every piece of evidence, Frank's detailed surveillance logs, bank records showing the fraudulent transfers and card usage, Paul Hayes' sworn confession obtained via the FBI, Dr. Sterling's original note and his formal affidavit about the family's visit, testimonies from the bank manager and pawnshop owners, and now, Olivia's devastating insider account. My role was primarily to provide context, answer questions, and stay safely hidden. The isolation of the motel began to wear on me, but the knowledge that we were building an unshakable case kept me focused. The day before the hearing, Benjamin made one last desperate attempt. A new lawyer, not Abernathy, contacted Montgomery. They're offering a deal, Graham informed me. Benjamin will drop the guardianship petition immediately if you agree to drop all fraud and abuse charges and provide him with a substantial financial settlement to cover his debts and start fresh. The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, facing overwhelming evidence, his first instinct was to try and extort money from me. Tell them, I instructed Montgomery, my voice devoid of emotion, that the only settlement I am interested in involves prison time and full restitution. Tell them I will see them in court tomorrow. The message was delivered. There would be no turning back. Tomorrow, in court, the truth would finally be laid bare. The morning of the emergency hearing arrived gray and heavy, mirroring the weight in my chest. Dressed in a simple but dignified navy suit I'd purchased during my transformation, I walked into the county courthouse flanked by Dr. Montgomery and a junior associate from his firm. The sterile hallways buzzed with the low hum of official business, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos swirling inside me. Olivia was already there, waiting for us near the courtroom entrance. She looked pale but resolute, clutching a worn copy of a law school textbook like a shield. She gave me a tentative smile and squeezed my hand. "Ready, Grandma," she whispered. "As I'll ever be," I replied, finding strength in her quiet courage. Inside courtroom 3B, the atmosphere was tense. Benjamin and Eleanor were already seated at the respondents' table with their lawyer, Arthur Abernathy, a man whose slicked back hair and expensive suit couldn't quite mask the predatory glint in his eyes. Benjamin stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, refusing to look at me. Eleanor fidgeted nervously, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, a pathetic performance of grief that nobody was buying. A few curious onlookers and perhaps a couple of local reporters dotted the public benches. Judge Harrison, the same judge who had granted the restraining orders, entered and took his seat, his expression stern, impatient. "This is an emergency hearing regarding petition 2025 G781, filed by Mr. Benjamin Caldwell seeking temporary guardianship over his mother, Mrs. Martha Caldwell," the clerk announced. Judge Harrison peered over his glasses. "Mr. Abernathy, I have reviewed your petition citing Mrs. Caldwell's sudden disappearance and alleged erratic behavior. I have also reviewed the extensive response filed by Dr. Montgomery on Mrs. Caldwell's behalf, including some rather disturbing evidence. Proceed." Abernathy stood, smoothing his tie, oozing false sincerity. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Caldwell, and his wife are deeply concerned for his mother's well-being. Mrs. Caldwell, a 70-year-old widow, recently vanished from her home without explanation, leaving only a cryptic note. Prior to this, she exhibited increasing confusion and paranoia, culminating in baseless accusations against her loving family. Dr. Sterling, her longtime physician, even documented concerns." He gestured towards Benjamin and Eleanor. "They fear she is unable to care for herself, potentially being manipulated by outside influences, and seek only to protect her and her assets through temporary guardianship until a full competency evaluation can be performed." His voice was smooth, practiced, painting a picture of a devoted son tragically forced to intervene. Then, Dr. Montgomery rose, calm, precise, devastating. "Your Honor," he began, his voice cutting through Abernathy's narrative. "The loving family Mr. Abernathy describes is, in fact, the source of Mrs. Caldwell's distress, and the outside influences are legal counsel and investigators she was forced to hire to protect herself from their criminal conspiracy." A ripple of murmurs went through the courtroom. Montgomery laid out the evidence methodically. Exhibit A, affidavit from Dr. Elliot Sterling, detailing how Ms. Eleanor Caldwell attempted to solicit a false certification of incompetence and confirming Mrs. Caldwell is, in his professional opinion, mentally sound. He placed the document before the judge. Exhibit B, audio recordings, legally obtained via warrant subsequent to confirmed financial fraud, capturing Mr. Benjamin Caldwell, Ms. Eleanor Caldwell, and Ms. Olivia Caldwell, plotting to induce mental confusion in Mrs. Caldwell via medication tampering and gaslighting, explicitly stating their motive is to gain control of her assets and sell her home. He played a short, damning excerpt, Benjamin's voice whispering, "We make her really lose her mind." Benjamin flinched as if struck. Eleanor let out a small gasp. Montgomery continued, relentless. Exhibit C, evidence of extensive financial fraud perpetrated by Ms. Eleanor Caldwell, including applications for 5 credit cards using forged signatures, resulting in over $43,000 of debt incurred in Mrs. Caldwell's name. He presented bank statements and security footage stills. Exhibit D, evidence of Mr. Benjamin Caldwell's embezzlement from his former employer, Sterling Corp., using Mrs. Caldwell's joint bank account to launder approximately $50,000 over a 6-month period prior to his termination he concealed from his mother. He presented the findings from Sterling Corp's internal investigation. Exhibit E, sworn confession from Mr. Paul Hayes, admitting Mr. Caldwell paid him $50,000, using the aforementioned fraudulent credit card funds to forge medical documents declaring Mrs. Caldwell incompetent, and to create a fraudulent will, naming Mr. Caldwell and Ms. Caldwell as sole beneficiaries. Abernathy leaped to his feet. "Objection! Hearsay! Improperly obtained! Overruled!" Judge Harrison snapped, waving him down, his eyes fixed on the documents Montgomery was presenting. "The FBI provided Mr. Hayes' confession. Sit down, Mr. Abernathy." Finally, Montgomery played his trump card. "And Exhibit F, Your Honor, a sworn affidavit from Ms. Olivia Caldwell, the petitioner's own daughter." He glanced towards Olivia, who sat straight, meeting her parents' horrified stares. "In this affidavit, Ms. Caldwell confirms the conspiracy against her grandmother, details her parents' financial desperation, including Mr. Caldwell's gambling debts and involvement with loan sharks, confirms their plan to forge the will, and tragically reveals their intention to frame her for theft if their plan failed." He placed Olivia's thick statement on the growing pile before the judge. The courtroom was utterly silent. Benjamin stared at Olivia, his face a mask of disbelief and betrayal. Eleanor seemed to shrink in her seat, covering her face with her hands. Abernathy looked utterly defeated, shuffling his now useless papers. Judge Harrison finished reading Olivia's affidavit, his face grim. He looked directly at Benjamin and Eleanor. "Mr. Caldwell, Miss Caldwell," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Based on the evidence presented by your own counsel versus the overwhelming evidence presented by Dr. Montgomery, this petition for emergency guardianship appears not only baseless, but potentially fraudulent and malicious." He picked up his gavel. "The petition for temporary guardianship is hereby denied with prejudice. The temporary restraining orders against Mr. Benjamin Caldwell, Ms. Eleanor Caldwell, and Ms. Olivia Caldwell regarding contact with Mrs. Martha Caldwell and her assets remain in full effect." He paused, his gaze sweeping over Benjamin and Eleanor. "Furthermore, given the substantial evidence of criminal activity presented, including conspiracy, fraud, forgery, identity theft, and potential witness tampering, this court is referring this entire matter, along with all submitted evidence, to the District Attorney's Office for immediate criminal investigation." The gavel fell with a sharp crack that echoed the shattering of Benjamin and Eleanor's lives. It was over. Their desperate gamble had failed spectacularly. They hadn't just lost the bid for guardianship, they were now facing serious criminal charges. As court officers moved towards them, I met Benjamin's eyes one last time. There was no anger left, no defiance, only sheer, unadulterated terror. The courtroom dissolved into chaos. Reporters scrambled. Cameras flashed. Benjamin lunged towards Olivia, screaming incoherently, but court officers swiftly restrained him. Eleanor collapsed into sobs, a broken figure shielded by her now useless lawyer. I watched them being led away, not towards freedom, but towards the grim reality of the criminal justice system they had tried to weaponize against me. Olivia rushed to my side, burying her face in my shoulder, trembling. "It's over, Grandma," she whispered. "It's finally over." "No, my dear," I corrected gently, stroking her hair. "It's just beginning." The criminal investigation proceeded swiftly, bolstered by the mountain of evidence Montgomery had compiled and Olivia's unwavering testimony. Faced with irrefutable proof, the recordings, Hayes' confession, the financial trail, Olivia's insider account, Benjamin and Eleanor had no choice but to accept plea deals, albeit harsher ones than initially offered before the emergency hearing debacle. Benjamin pleaded guilty to felony charges, including conspiracy to commit fraud, grand larceny related to the embezzlement, and identity theft. He was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. Eleanor, pleading guilty to conspiracy and felony identity theft, received 10 years. Their attempts to blame each other during the process only served to confirm their shared culpability in the eyes of the court. Restitution was ordered, but both Dr. Montgomery and I knew full well that recovering any significant amount was a pipe dream. Their assets were gone, swallowed by Benjamin's debts and their own reckless spending. Their true punishment lay in the loss of their freedom, their reputations, and any semblance of the comfortable life they had schemed so desperately to attain by destroying mine. True to my word, I finalized the changes to my will. Benjamin was formally disinherited. Every mention of him struck from the document. The bulk of my estate, including the house on Elm Street, which I decided to sell, wanting no physical ties to that painful past, and the significant funds Robert had secretly left me, was designated to establish the Martha Caldwell Foundation for Elder Justice. A substantial, separate trust fund was created for Olivia's education and future, and another smaller one specifically for baby Robert's care and upbringing, both managed by a neutral third-party trustee, ensuring neither parent could ever touch a dime. Olivia, after much soul-searching and counseling, made the difficult but brave decision to place baby Robert for open adoption with a loving family she carefully selected, realizing she wasn't emotionally or financially ready to be the mother he deserved while pursuing her own demanding path towards healing and education. It was a heart-wrenching choice, but one made out of love and self-awareness. She remained actively involved in his life as per the open adoption agreement, visiting regularly. With the legal battles concluded and Olivia finding her footing, I felt free to finally embrace the new life I had glimpsed in Switzerland. I sold the Elm Street house, exorcising its ghosts, and made the move permanent. Not to Switzerland in the end, but to a quiet coastal town in Maine, a place Robert and I had always dreamed of visiting, but never had the chance. I bought a small, charming cottage overlooking the ocean, filled it with light, art, and books. I finally learned to paint, joined a local gardening club, and walked the beach every morning, breathing in the salty air of freedom. The Martha Caldwell Foundation flourished under the guidance of a professional board, including Joseph and eventually Olivia once she finished law school. It became a powerful voice, advocating for stronger laws against elder abuse and providing crucial support to hundreds, then thousands, of seniors facing situations mirroring my own. My story, shared through the foundation and my unexpectedly popular memoir, continued to resonate, a testament to resilience and the fight for dignity. I never heard from Benjamin or Eleanor directly again after their incarceration. Olivia occasionally shared brief, factual updates, Benjamin struggling with prison life, Eleanor reportedly finding religion behind bars, but I felt no urge to reconnect. The betrayal had cut too deep. My peace was too precious to risk. Sometimes, watching the waves crash against the shore, I think about the son I adopted, the boy I loved. I mourn the man he could have been, but I no longer mourn the family I lost, because in losing them, I found myself. I found strength I never knew I possessed, a purpose that gave meaning to my pain, and a chosen family built on respect and truth. It wasn't the retirement Robert and I had planned, but in its own unexpected way, it was a life reclaimed, a life lived fully, honestly, and finally, for myself.